Got room for one more?
Who the hell are you? And what happened to them?
Name's Major Marcus Warren, former U.S. Cavalry. Currently a servant of the court. Trying to bring a couple no-goods in the market.
You taking them into Red Rock?
Figure that's where you headed, right?
Yeah. That damn blasted blizzard has been on our ass for the last 3 hours.
So you hightailing it halfway to Menace Haberdashery.
You know I am.
May I come aboard?
Well, Smoke, if it up to me, yes. But it ain't up to me.
Who's it up to?
Fella in the wagon.
Fella in the wagon ain't partial company?
Fella in the wagon, he paid for a private trip, and I'm here to tell you, he paid a pretty penny for privacy. So if you want to go to Minnie's with us, you're gonna have to talk to him.
Hello and welcome once again to Merlin Reviews. Today, we will be taking our last look at Tarantino, at least for a while. The final movie in our docket is The Hateful Eight. This film is a Western mystery thriller, combining the Western setting and historical themes of Django Unchained with the claustrophobic nature of Reservoir Dogs. A little bit of everything Tarantino is here. While not necessarily a magnum opus, it does feel, to me at least, a little bit like a swan song. It takes place sometime after the Civil War, following a group of individuals who are stuck out in the middle of a blizzard in Wyoming. Kurt Russell plays John Ruth, the hangman, who along with his driver O.B. are escorting the criminal Daisy Domergue to receive trial in the town of Red Rock. Along the way, he reluctantly takes on some other passengers, a former Union soldier turned bounty hunter, Major Warren, and the Southern renegade, Chris Mannix, who claims to be the new sheriff of Red Rock. The group meets up at a stop point, finding within the abandoned haberdashery 4 more strangers: an Englishman, a Mexican, a cowboy, and a former Confederate general. John Ruth suspects that one of the strangers may be lying about his identity and is there to try and free Domergue. I think if there is one consistent theme within The Hateful Eight, it's that appearances can be deceiving. Harkening back to Jules in Pulp Fiction, or even the gangsters in Reservoir Dogs, people are often complicated. Sometimes they do bad things. In an era like the Old West, with the concept of frontier justice, the idea of morality is harsher, but perhaps a bit more flexible. Tarantino once again uses a diverse group of characters to explore basic concepts of morality while playing with the idea of how identity plays a factor in the choices that we make. Taking place some time after the Civil War, racial and political tensions are rather high. At least half of the characters in the film were involved in the war somehow, and still feel rather strongly about it. However, while it is often easy to lump certain characters into specific categories based on ideals, much like the plantation owners in Django, The Hateful Eight seems to reinforce the concept that the idea of good and evil is not always so clear. Within a few scenes, the Major is perceived as a great war hero and as a cold-hearted killer. Even more so, much like possibly all the characters in the film, he's a liar. He fabricates elements of the truth for survival. Does that make him a man of bad moral character? The film doesn't seem to suggest that his lying nature is evil, but due to his race and station in life during this period of history, it's something that he is just required to do, despite the negative effect it may have. Another character, Chris Mannix, is seen as a war criminal, but seems to have enough knowledge of the law and a willingness to abide by it. In fact, those two men seem to be at opposite ends of the spectrum at the beginning of the film, but by the end, they form a bond based on a mutual need for survival, and perhaps even for some respect that they end up having for each other. Even Domergue, who certainly seems vicious, has a history that is clouded in mystery. Only John Ruth seems to know of her exploits. Interestingly, the details of the crime aren't made too clear. In most of these movies, there always seems to be a character who stands out as being morally better than the rest. Upon the first viewing of the film, I would have said that goes to John Ruth. Despite his rough nature, he seems to have a strong sense of integrity. He's a man of his word. Perhaps his truthful nature is what leads to his fate. Even more so, though, the character with the best moral fiber is easily O.B., the 9th member of the party and the only one with a clear loyalty to anyone, John Ruth. He seems to be there to just do his job and get paid, but seems practical and willing to get things done for everyone. It may be the simplicity of his character or the simple honesty he seems to convey, but everyone seems to like O.B. It's a fun little observation, but the allegiances between characters are at least partially forged based on O.B.'s fate. It's ironic considering he doesn't have much character beyond being a guy who's just there to do his job, but that does seem to strike a chord with most of the characters, particularly John and Chris. The Hateful Eight is a well thought out mystery, but still has strong rewatch value as you can spot different clues and experience the story in different ways. What really keeps this film flowing, though, much like many of Tarantino's other films, is the well-executed dialogue to flesh out some very interesting characters. I will admit, I think some scenes may not flow as well as others, and some shots are a bit lengthy, but I didn't really mind. The costumes are great, it's well shot, the score is excellent, and the characters are very interesting. Oddly enough, I think this film may not have as much of a unifying theme, but it's really just Tarantino showcasing his skill and maybe just having some fun doing a mystery. I hope Tarantino continues making more movies, but if this were his final one, I think it's a very good note to end on. I leave it with an A. Alright everyone, that wraps up our exploration of Tarantino's films, at least for the moment. Next time, we begin our investigation into the action films of Robert Rodriguez. Stay magical.
One of them fellas is not what he says he is.
What is he?
In cahoots with this one, that's what he is. One of them, maybe even two of them, is here to see Domergue goes free.
Are you sure you ain't just being paranoid?
Our best bet is this duplicitous fella ain't as cool a customer as Daisy here. He won't have the leather patience it takes to just sit here. He can't handle it. He'll stop waiting. Try and create his opportunity, and that's when Mr. Jumpy reveals himself.
And what you got to say about all this?
What I got to say about John Reese Ravens? He's absolutely right. Me and one of them fellows is in cahoots. We're just waiting for everybody to go to sleep. That's what we're gonna kill you.